Hello there! Welcome back to Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli. Jacob's still not with us for these theme between themes. We do have a guest, though. Welcome back to Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on, if I didn't already say that. We do have a guest. If you follow us on Twitter, which follow us on Twitter at @InAGalaxyPod, you know that our guest for this week is the host of Afra's Artifacts on YouTube, and also a competitor in the Movie Trivia Schmodown Star Wars division, Marie Wilson. How are you doing, Marie?
I'm fantastic, doing wonderfully.
Great, I'm so excited for this Theme Between Themes episode right here. Let's do our little Theme Between Themes intro that I made up on the fly a few weeks ago. You're entering another plane. A plane where we leave behind the logistical issues, canon continuity, and the Easter eggs. Only here are thematic ideas and symbolic imagery. You're entering a theme between themes. What's in here? Only what you take with you. Before we get into our little theme between themes thing right here, I'd like to get to know Marie a little bit more and have everyone here get to know Marie a little bit more before we get into this. So, first things first, I want to ask you how you got into Star Wars.
Well, I was 10 years old, so 1996, when my dad decided to show me the original trilogy, and I fell in love immediately. And we watched all three movies in 2 days. And so it was like all of it all at once. And my parents, obviously, they waited until I was 10 to show it to me. So like they love it, but they're behind on the current movies and all that. So, but me, like I took to it and like on tests, I would draw pictures of different characters, and I just ate it up. I loved it. And then the prequels just floored me. And huge prequel fan here. Huge prequel fan. And yeah, then when canon got restarted, was about the same time that I was struggling with a lot of emotional stuff. And it really helped me knowing that I could start from the beginning and really keep up with everything, helped me to combat my own demons. And that was really, really awesome.
That's great. That's so interesting to hear, and your journey is really interesting. How did you get into Star Wars content creation?
Oh, so that is all because of Dragon Con. So I went to Dragon Con and saw these panels, Star Wars panels, and I was like, sometimes I thought, I know more than the panelists. And so I was like, I need to be up there, but how do I get up there? I have to do something that shows that I know what I know. And also the Dragon Con trivia contest, I took it my first year and got in the top 10 and was like, oh man, to study, I could start a review blog and I have a review for every single bit of canon material. And with those reviews, I can go back and reread and catch up and be prepared for trivia the upcoming year. So it really, Dragon Con is what got me started on content creation.
I forgot in my intro to reference you as 2020 Dragon Con Trivia Star Wars Champion.
Yeah.
I watched that match as it was going live. I was on the Star Wars Explained YouTube channel, and that was like, again, I like to think I'm into Star Wars trivia. That Star Wars trivia contest is, I'm sure you've heard it thousands of times. It's like off the walls. It's
Yeah.
It's crazy. And like just the general idea of being a canon completionist, even though like I watch a lot of Star Wars stuff. Like, indeed, the Nomad Droids, one of the episodes, was the third time I've watched that episode this year, which is 3 more times than I would have liked to watch that episode this year, to be completely honest with you. But even that, like, I'm very behind on all the books and comics and stuff, so I can't imagine, like, trying to watch and read everything, but I know there are those people who just try and soak it all in, and I admire that a lot. So, speaking of Star Wars stuff, let's get into, we do on In a Galaxy every week, a review of the most recent Bad Batch episode, so I thought I'd have Marie join me for this one. This episode is being released around a week or two after it's recorded, so this is not the most recent one. It's, the one before that, Bad Batch episode 10. That was hard for me to remember for some reason. 10, Common Ground. In the episode, the Bad Batch go and rescue Raxus Senator Avi Singh from capture by the Empire after he spoke out against their tyranny, while leaving Omega behind for reasons, and coming back to Ord Mantell to discover that Omega has made so much money by playing holo chess that she has managed to pay off the entire debt that the Batch owed to Sid. The entire thing. It was a weird episode for me because after the monumentalness of the last two episodes, it felt like we kind of took a step back and did some more character-driven stuff. And I was kind of still expecting to be going at the fast pace we were going in the last two episodes.
Yeah. I loved that they went back to Raxus, because instead of giving us a brand new planet with a brand new set of issues, they went back to the Separatist capital and were like, we're going to continue this storyline. And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that's something that the Bad Batch is starting to do very, very well, in my opinion, is continuing storylines from the Clone Wars and making them interesting and evolving them with the, like, cut storyline from Cut and Run, or, like, the Martez sisters storyline in Decommit. I was saying to somebody this morning, we got the Martez sisters in the Bad Batch. I didn't think we were gonna get the Martez sisters in the Bad Batch. That's ridiculous. Like, it's so cool, but it's like, never in my wildest dreams did I think we were gonna get Cad Bane back in the Bad Batch. I thought that guy was dead. I thought he was dead. I felt like it was the crazy fan theory stuff of, oh, we're gonna get Snoke in the Bad Batch. I'm like, no, we're not gonna get Cad Bane in the Bad Batch. Yeah, it's crazy to me how well they've been doing this continuation of the Clone Wars. Also in that episode, what I really adored. Wait, go ahead. Sorry,
I just said absolutely. Just agreeing.
One of the things I adored is that first 3 minutes of the episode, I think, was the best part of that episode. Before the Bad Batch gets involved, with Singh beginning to praise the Empire, but then walking back that, and that whole examination of that side and how that's heading, it seemed very much weirdly to me like, do you know that part in Chapter 4 of The Mandalorian where before Mando sits down on Sorgan, we take a look at what the people of Sorgan are going through before he comes there, so we get a little context. It felt very much like that to me, where we got this context without any of the main characters in there. And I really like that device, and I always appreciate when the device gets used.
Yeah, I think that was, and I loved how you had this senator, and he wasn't continuing to be a separatist. He was just he was being a human, a person who loved his people and wanted to help his people. And I thought that was really cool.
It was an old thing I remember in some Legends stuff where the early rebels were the former separatists. And I didn't think we were going to be going back to that in canon, because I didn't think canon was ever going to get that specific. Like, I didn't think canon was going to say, like, oh, well, some early rebel cells were former separatists. I didn't think they were going to go there. But they went there, which I actually admire a lot, and I think really, like, says a lot about, like, what... When canon said, oh, we're going to take the best things from Legends, I mean, they're taking a lot of great things from Legends.
I definitely think so. Even some of the weird stuff, but some of the weird stuff is pretty great. So
yeah, I'm not caught up on this comic, but I really want to actually catch up on this comic. They introduced Dirge and Afra
Yeah. Yeah.
I love Dirge. I gotta start reading. I started reading the Vader comic because I was so obsessed with Ochi of Bestoon. I think I might just start reading Afra because I love Dirge so much.
Well,
Yeah.
I obviously highly recommend the Dr. Afra comics.
Really?
Since
I didn't know you were so interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand that Afra plays a pretty big role in your Star Wars love, but apparently, you know who else plays a pretty big role? Nice segue here. C-3PO, Human-Cyborg Relations. Yeah, so what Marie did for this theme between themes is a little different, but I love it just the same. She decided to do 2 episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars, Bombad Jedi and Nomad Droids, and then she put together this crazy little montage of clips from all across the movies. Every movie except for, I'm pretty sure, Return of the Jedi, The Last Jedi, Rogue One, and Solo is on here.
Yeah.
So we have clips from Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars movie, Revenge of the Sith, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Force Awakens, and The Rise of Skywalker. That gives us a very good general overview of who C-3PO is, why he does what he does, and kind of our background around C-3PO. So before we get into like the nitty-gritty and the details, I guess I'll just ask you, Marie, this. Why C-3PO? Why did you choose this? What draws you to C-3PO?
So for me, he is the most relatable character in Star Wars. Growing up, I always had problems being ostracized and always trying to be helpful and always trying to be a nice person, but seemingly being just people being mean for no reason, it felt like. And so I get that. Like, I lived it, because C-3PO is always trying to be helpful, and he has such a genuinely good heart, but people treat him like he's not worth being around, and it's like, oh, it's so sad. Like, he just wants to help. And so I feel that, like, I mean, my life is a lot better now. I'm 34 years old and I've, grown into myself, but like, definitely when I was, in like middle school, Lord have mercy, I definitely dealt with C-3PO type situations.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting to me, like, because, you have these daring heroes, Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Leia, all those people who, just rush headlong into danger. C-3PO's like, I'm out.
yeah.
I'm gone. I mean, look, I'm not trying to diss on C-3PO. He's brave when it counts. But it does, there's something inherently relatable about him just constantly running away from. I think of that point in New Hope where the stormtroopers come into the Tantive 4 and they're just shooting, and 3PO's just running away, just scared for his life. Yeah, he's an interesting character, and one of the things I love about C-3PO is how present he is. He's around for everything. There's nothing that this droid hasn't seen. Anthony Daniels has been in every single Star Wars movie, and 11 of those have been as C-3PO.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So like this droid is not going away anytime soon. Marie and I have decided to start at the beginning of the chronological side and go to the end. So we first have a bunch of clips from the Phantom Menace where 3PO is introduced. We see Anakin build him, and then after the pod race, Anakin leaves and doesn't take 3PO along with him, leaving him on Tatooine. I'll make sure Mom doesn't sell you or anything. Sell me! Oh dear.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, his maker. Like, he's
Yeah.
always saying the maker, and his maker was like, I'll be sure that mom doesn't sell you or anything. And I'm just like, what? No, Anakin. And the thing is, my favorite character in all of Star Wars is Anakin. So like, I feel attacked. I'm like, you're
I
one of my
feel that.
favorite characters, and you're so mean to C-3PO, who you built. Like, I mean, he says, you've been a great pal, which is sweet, but it's still kind of
Then he
offhand.
immediately
Like,
shafts him. Just like,
yes,
I'll make sure mom doesn't sell you or anything. And I actually wrote in my notes I was saying, I'm like, it's a weird part of the plot that the crew in Phantom Menace doesn't take 3PO with them. Like, I know it doesn't really make sense tactically, but like story-wise, it seems like, why wouldn't they?
Yeah,
it's strange. I know this was a controversy when the prequels were coming out. Did you have it doesn't seem like you do. Do you have any issue with Anakin building C-3PO? I know some people had some issues with that. I don't.
No, not at all. I think it was a brilliant connection. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's like, because like they don't meet in the original trilogy or anything, so there's nothing there that's like actually conflicting that. I never actually minded that personally, but yeah, I actually just, this first encounter between him and R2, there's some shaky parts of the Phantom Menace. That scene is perfection. The introduction of C-3PO and R2-D2 is, they could have totally made that as cheesy as they could. They didn't. They did it perfectly. My pots are showing. It's like automatically R2's just already butting heads with him, which I love.
Yeah, they're already acting. They already have that great chemistry with each other, and it's like they just met.
It's great. Yeah, it's interesting to me that like we only see C-3PO as the gold we know him as in Revenge of the Sith. It's interesting to me that like he's not even fully completed in Phantom Menace. He has this like really like I've heard him described as silver C-3PO in Attack of the Clones. That does not look like silver. It's like gold, and not gold. It's like gray or something like that. It's not even. Yeah. It's not. It's so dull.
Probably from the sand.
Yeah.
Being on
coarse and rough and
Tatooine for
gets everywhere.
And then I thought it was interesting how his very first line is a line of confusion, where he's like, he can't see anything. So it's like begins his being confused and ending up in crazy situations.
This reminds me,
his very first line.
You reminded me of the whole spiel I went on in our last Theme Between Themes episode about Kylo Ren's last line, Ben Solo's last line being "ow," and how great that was. But yeah, I will defend that. I know people have like criticized that. I will defend that move forever. No, but see, but you have a good point. 3PO's first line in the chronologically being confusion, and then I'll add to that release order. 3PO's other first line is also confusion. Yeah. Did you hear that? They've shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure.
Yeah.
Which is
exactly
perfect. Also, yeah. Anything else you got about Phantom Menace before we go on to the Attack of the Clones stuff?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's
the main. Yeah,
let's get on to Attack of the Clones. We have one clip here where they show up. Anakin and Padme and R2 show up on Tatooine. 10 years have gone by. C-3PO is fully plated in not silver, I guess. And he is and C-3PO, this is one of my favorite things. He's just watching. He's just standing there. Major galactic drama's going on. He's just like, so I'm here. I'm just standing here. Yeah.
I really like this particular scene because it shows the one person that is kind to C-3PO all the time, and that's Padme.
Interesting.
She like if you pay attention to how she interacts with him, she a couple times she's like she'll you know gently brush him off, but she's never brusque with him.
Because, like,
She's
even
always
Luke.
very kind.
Because, like, even Luke is, like, a little bit cranky at the beginning. Like, Luke, I love him, but, you know, he has that whiny phase in New Hope, and even then he's like, you know, get out of here, 3PO.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just Padme. So when C-3PO is like, "Oh my god, the Maker," and Anakin's just like, "I'm here to see my mother." And I get that Anakin is dealing with a lot of stuff and he knows that his mother's in trouble, but his creation is so excited to see him, and he's just like,
Get out of the way, I need to see her.
yeah, I want to see my mother. And Padme's like, "Hello, C-3PO." Like, she's actually communicates with him, and I'm like, "You're so sweet."
Yeah. I'm, like, trying to think now. I'm going through my mind of everyone else's interactions with C-3PO and anybody's. Like, because I'm thinking, who else would be consistently nice to 3PO? And I'm failing to think of anybody. Like, Leia? Maybe?
She tells him to shut up at one point.
Okay, sure. Because I'm thinking, like, I know, like, Han's like, get the professor in the back. And, yeah, Han's, like, a jerk to 3PO.
Oh,
constantly.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm trying to think of, like, Rey, but then Rey doesn't actually interact with 3PO as much as you'd think she would.
Yeah.
Rey's off on
say,
her own adventures.
Yeah. In, not to jump too far, but just saying, in Rise of Skywalker, there's a little more respect for C-3PO.
Yeah, there is.
Then...
But then there's, like, you know, there's that, there's that, part under the caves. Where Poe just snaps to him, the one time we want you to talk, you can't.
Yeah.
Which, again, 3PO and, like, 3PO... Rise of Skywalker is 3PO's movie. I mean, at least of the Disney era, at least. Like, Force Awakens has some good stuff, Last Jedi has a few things sprinkled in there, Rogue One has that little cameo scene. Rise of Skywalker is 3PO's outing. He's going there. Yeah. Maybe we'll get on to those, Clone Wars clips.
Okay.
I couldn't believe I was watching this movie again. Yeah. We have, C-3PO, figuring out that Padme's in danger, and, getting the, Coruscant guard in there to rescue her from the clutches of Zero the Hutt.
Yeah, I love how. So this is another example of Padme being very kind to him and respecting the fact that he's able to actually accomplish things.
Yep.
And
your timing was perfect.
Yeah, she's so sweet. So I just love that. I think it's so funny, the comm going off and then her tricking the battle droids into turning it on. And then, C-3PO showing up, and she's just like, sends him the message, and, he follows through, and he's like, am I too late? He's so worried, but he just wanted to save her.
That's actually an interesting thing. I was just realizing that both in the Clone Wars movie clips and in the Bombad Jedi episode, Padme uses that trickery a lot. More than I thought she does. Yeah,
she's sneaky.
She's sneaky. She knows her stuff. There's that. Actually, we'll get to that later. That thing with the Jedi and Bombad Jedi and how she does not bat an eye. And I know it's about 3 people. Like, she does not bat an eye. She's like, "Oh, thanks for rescuing me, Jedi." And that like characters acting in Star Wars. So, like, actors pretending to act is always a funny thing. But, like, anytime Padme does it, it's hilarious. Yeah. I guess the next thing we have right here are those two episodes, Bombad Jedi and Nomad Droids.
Yes.
Which I'll admit, Nomad Droids is not one of my favorite episodes. I like Bombad Jedi a lot more. Bombad Jedi is a fun little episode. One of my favorite exchanges ever. Maybe one of my favorite things C-3PO has ever said. They're talking about, Padme and C-3PO are talking about her ship. And Padme says, battle droids? No. Jar Jar? Jar Jar.
Jar Jar.
Which was it's such a good exchange. It's such a funny exchange because not only does Padme know, but 3PO also knows.
Yeah.
It's great. It's such an awesome exchange right there.
I have repeated that exchange multiple times when I'm talking to people about the Clone Wars, because I just think it's so funny. I love how C-3PO is like, Jar Jar.
Yeah. There's another exchange that I didn't write down, but now I'm thinking about it, which is that point where C-3PO thinks that Jar Jar died at the very beginning, and he's like, oh no, it's all my fault, what have I done? And then Jar Jar appears, and then, this is the funnier part, 3PO says something like, if you're done messing around, we have to find Mistress Padme. He instantly switches from utter concern and dread to the snippy protocol droid that he is, which is just perfect.
Yeah. And he is very complimentary of Jar Jar. Like, when that happens, the death, when he thinks Jar Jar's died, he's like, he was so brave, and and it's all my fault, and was just so sad. But yeah, when Jar Jar reappears, he's like, get me down from here, and like, he's like, come on,
he
you're
acts
fine.
like 3PO again. He does 3PO again. C-3PO is one of the few Star Wars characters who has never fought a single person in the entire series. And yet, without C-3PO, in some occasions, some of our characters would have been dead.
Yeah.
Like, 3PO saves the day here, C-3PO saves the day in one of our clips from New Hope, with the trash compactor.
Yeah.
And there's that little trickery he does where he goes like, where he tells the battle droids, the Jedi's over there. I mean, that's really self-preservation, but it's that's the other thing that 3PO does. It's an interesting thing that the heroes don't do. The heroes are so incredibly selfless that they always put everybody above themselves, and I'm not saying they shouldn't. 3PO does that too, but he never avoids self-preservation. He never avoids making sure that he's all right as well.
Right. Right. Which is important.
It is, and it's something that
important.
that the heroes don't tend to do. There's that line I remember I was watching this for the last Theme Between Themes very recently, where Luke says, and this is a line I missed somehow in Return of the Jedi, even though it's one of my favorite sequences from that movie. Soon I'll be dead and you with me, when he's on the Death Star. And it's an interesting idea that Luke was prepared to sacrifice himself on the second Death Star. Luke was prepared to die to see that mission through. I mean, of course, Luke's prepared to die for anything because he's Luke. But it's interesting on that mission, which is it's a perspective that I didn't really get for that. But 3PO's never doing that. Well, actually, I shouldn't say never, because we'll get to the Rise of Skywalker, in which he pretty much does that. So he doesn't until he does, I guess we can say. He doesn't until he does. I know that you're a big fan of 3PO, and I of course am too, but I also kind of love that sometimes when 3PO Because C-3PO, one of his main components is intelligence. That he has been programmed, to be able to blurt out facts quickly, and he has ability to communicate in over 6 million forms of communication. However, the funny part is when the episode makes C-3PO a little dumb. And it's not ever like stuff he doesn't know. It's like intuition stuff. It's stuff he's supposed to implicitly figure out. Stuff he's supposed to figure out based on context that he never figures out. There's jumping ahead a little bit to Nomad Droids. There's that point, which is the craziest line ever, when he's with the... I said this wrong, maybe. I don't know in our episode reviewing these. I don't know how to pronounce these. If you know how to pronounce these, please tell me I'm doing this wrong. Petitite Petunins.
I call them the Padatites, but...
Padatites, okay, yeah. I don't know. That name always confused me.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, when he looks at them all and goes, "Excellent, you are now a democracy," and then just walks away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not how the Force works.
Yeah.
When he doesn't realize that that maybe there's a little bit more to the situation than he might be aware of.
That's true.
It's a fun thing. Anything you got for this episode? I have some other things, but I want to see what you got as well.
Yeah, just a couple more things from Bombad Jedi.
Yeah.
So when Anaconda Farr says that you are, to Jar Jar, you're either the bravest Jedi or the most foolish Jedi I've ever met. And Jar Jar says, I think I'm neither. And C-3PO goes, I think you're a little bit of both. And so he says it in like this super sweet, kind way, even though he's by saying that he does believe Jar Jar is a fool to some degree, but he's also saying that he's super brave. So he's like complimenting Jar Jar while also being realistic.
C-3PO knows from, being a droid how people can easily get left out. And he has that initiative to make sure that nobody will ever be left out.
Yeah.
There's one of the most interesting parts of C-3PO from I think anything in either of these two episodes is in this one. When Jar Jar accidentally opens Padme's closet and we see Anakin's robe.
Thing.
Who's in you supposing this belongs to? I wouldn't know.
Yeah,
that
you can
3PO
tell he's
kept that secret.
Yeah.
Is there's that line, I'll reference it again from Rise of Skywalker. The one time we need you to talk, you can't. That you would think that 3PO would not be able to keep his mouth shut about something like that.
Right.
But he does.
He does.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah. And I like how they make it clear that he does know because he pauses in the middle of saying that sentence.
Yeah. It's the whole Star Wars characters acting where he has to pretend like he has no idea what the heck's happening.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. We got some classic 3PO lines in this episode. One of my favorites is that 3PO tells, I don't know who he tells about this. I think probably Jar Jar. He tells Jar Jar that he has a bad feeling about this.
Yes.
And I actually love when 3PO says that. There are characters that I like more when they say that, and when they don't say that. C-3PO is a good one, because it just fits with his character. He's constantly worried. So, of course, he has a bad feeling about this. It's also, just famous Star Wars line, so I love that stuff. Anything else before we get to the Nomad Droids?
I think that's it. There was the one time where C-3PO after the second time Jar Jar dies, he's like, he was always such a misfit. And I just like, but he's still like reminiscing. He's like sad that Jar Jar is dead again.
Yeah. You'd think he'd realize that Jar Jar is just not like dying. It's so crazy. That's such a Bombad Jedi just in general, going a little further beyond C-3PO for a second, is such a crazy. It's such a weird episode. And it's a one-off episode in the Clone Wars, which is more common early on than later on. But they never make it seem like that was just an isolated event, because basically the implication is that Far was like killed because of that.
Yeah.
Later in the war.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nuts for this, like, you know, crazy little funny kids episode about Padme, Jar Jar, and C-3PO to be the cause of the death of Anaconda Far.
Yeah. It's such a crazy trio.
it is. It's weird also that C-3PO in this episode is without R2. It's something true. That, like, you know, I'm trying to think, when do we see him other than in the movie, in the Clone Wars movie, in Rise of Skywalker, in Force Awakens, because R2's shut down. Yeah. But that's it. That's all the times he's without R2 in this thing. Every single other time, R2 is near him or with him.
In the comics, sometimes they're separated, but that's the comics.
Yeah. It's interesting to see a C-3PO without R2. In this episode, almost Jar Jar is his R2. Like, Jar Jar's replacing R2 a little bit, which is even funnier, honestly, because Jar Jar just does not know what he's doing sometimes.
No.
Yeah. Should we get on to Nomad Droids?
Yeah.
This episode.
I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
You will hear, people will hear Jacob and my thoughts on Nomad Droids. Oh, when's that coming out? That's coming out end of July. And I'm glad you like it. I can't say the same. It's an interesting episode, and I don't think this episode's for me. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think the way I always think of Nomad Droids, and the episode that precedes it as well, Mercy Mission, is that it is an homage to the 80s Droids cartoons. And it is like it's one of those. It's just in the modern Clone Wars animation, and you know, with the Clone Wars devices.
Right.
You know, he says to R2 in the beginning of the episode, "We have been in the most absurd situations I could never compute." And that just sounds like something that would introduce droids. Even though I haven't actually seen droids, I just know, like, the general hijinks that go on droids, where they're, like, hopping across the galaxy on adventure after adventure, sort of thing. I'm interested to see, to know why you like this episode. I'm interested to know that.
Okay, so I love how it starts off with, I mean, Grievous is attacking, and it's this, you would think that it would be focused on Grievous, but Grievous is in the background, and it's C-3PO and R2-D2 that are, like, going through the hallway trying to get away, and they're like, C-3PO's like, "General Grievous," and then they're, like, running, trying to get away, but and there's all, like, bombs going off, and blaster fire, and crazy stuff happening, and they're in the foreground, and all that's, like, in the back. And I think that's such a weird way to do a scene, but I love it.
It's interesting to think, like, thematically about that. Like, we have this episode, these two episodes with Mercy Mission before it, that are in the Clone Wars era, but aren't about the Clone War. They take place, like, literally, like you said, but also, like, kind of metaphorically as well, with the Clone Wars in the backdrop.
Exactly.
With the Clone Wars taking place metaphorically and literally behind them. I never thought of it like that, but you make a good point. There's also this idea I had. I think I might have said this on the episode. Who knows? We recorded it so long ago. But the idea that, after Nomad Droids and Mercy Mission is Umbara and Zygeria. I know that because we've recorded episodes on those as well. Those arcs are so incredibly dark and morally deep. So what do the Clone Wars writers give us right before that? Two of the lightest, most fun, and crazy episodes we've ever seen. There's no grand themes of anything in these episodes. It's just a fun time.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say in a sort of bigger sense, C-3PO, and R2-D2 together save two civilizations in Nomad Droids.
They do. I call them,
to a degree. I mean, the democracy thing, that's the issue. But
I call it crush dictatorships, but
Oh, okay, there you go. There you go.
Yeah. I was describing to somebody today. I'm like, so yeah, in the first adventure they crush a dictatorship. In the second adventure they crush a dictatorship. Okay. This episode could easily have been titled Dictatorship Crushers.
It's true.
Yeah. That's great. Another thing I noticed a lot in this episode is, and a lot of other clips too, is C-3PO's tendency, and I love the guy, but he has a tendency, I love the droid, he has a tendency to be an exposition device.
Yeah.
They'll be surrounded by battle droids. He'll go, Atu, we're being surrounded by battle droids. I'm like, yes, Captain Obvious. We understand that.
He's just trying to be helpful.
I know. I call him exposition droid like 6 times here. Where we just see what's going on. He's like, R2, look. It feels like I'm watching. It feels like I'm a little put into an episode of like Dora the Explorer, where it's like, can you say we're being surrounded by battle droids? Yeah.
And then I thought it was funny when they get to Bombad, with the pit droids doing the Wizard of Oz thing. At one point, C-3PO says, "Being silent is one of my specialties." Trying to get out of being killed or destroyed by the hologram. But
and you just side eye him at the moment. He's like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. It's also interesting because this episode is one of the 3 occasions I can think of. Scratch that, 4 occasions that I can think of where we see 3PO powered down. Phantom Menace, Nomad Droids, Evil Plans, and the Rise of Skywalker. I'm trying to think of anything else.
In A New Hope,
sure.
At the beginning, he powers down.
Yeah, okay. 5 occasions that I can think of. I probably missed some too. But he's powered down in Evil Plans because he's kidnapped. Okay, yeah. Or droid napped, I guess. Do you have other things for
I guess
Nomad Droids?
I just wanted to say that he doesn't in this episode, he doesn't seem to shy away from the problem. He is self-preservationist and he is, worried about what's going to happen, but he also, even though it turned out badly, he still took the initiative to be like, this is how you run a democracy. And
even though he failed miserably,
tried to help. He attempted, and then, he pointed out that Albi Dewal was a hologram and was like, oh, this is a hologram. And So he's trying to make a difference.
And of course, the episode ends with a classic 3PO line, because even though I forget exactly, I am programmed for, I think the line is something like, I am programmed for etiquette and not much of a storyteller, he says in A New Hope. But he says in the beginning, excellent, it's a long story, you wouldn't believe it. It all started when, and then the episode fades out. It's for a droid who isn't much of a storyteller, he tells a lot of stories. Do you want to get on to Revenge of the Sith? Do you have anything else? Yeah. Good choice on the scene. I love this scene so much from Revenge of the Sith. You've talked about a lot about C-3PO's constant desire to help people, so it makes the line, "Oh, I feel so helpless," so much, it hurts so much more.
Yeah. Because he's like, Anakin's like, everything will soon be set right. And he's like, all, everything's going to be okay. And
he's
Padme's
wistful
just
dark
like,
side Anakin.
Yes. And Padme's just so upset. And she's even nice to him about it. She's like, there's nothing.
No thank you, 3PO.
Yeah, she says no thank you. Like,
yeah.
She's so nice. And he's just, he's not offended or anything. He just feels helpless.
Yeah. The dreamy, wistful, dark side Anakin. Love won't save you, Padme. Only my new powers can. We can. I am stronger than the Chancellor. I can overthrow him, and together, it's so incredibly disgusting at the same time as it's so like heartbreaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you see how far this guy has fallen, but no, that C-3PO scene is awesome. Yeah. Should we get on to the New Hope scenes?
Yeah.
So we have 3 of them. The one where C-3PO begins his long tenure of being dismantled. The classic trash compactor scene, and the scene right after they destroy the Death Star, where C-3PO is a good friend and offers to repair R2 with some of his own circuits. Yeah. You go ahead with this one, because...
So, I feel like with all 3 of these, with the first one, he's, leave me behind and save yourself. So he's like willing to sacrifice himself to let them get away. He is being melodramatic. I get that. But still,
yeah,
because they're like, oh, stop. Like, come on. But in his head, he thinks he's helping. And then with the damaged R2-D2 and offering his parts to save his friend, like, he's both of those instances, he's willing to sacrifice himself to help the other people survive or get by. And then in the trash compactor, he thinks he killed Luke and his friends. Like, he thinks he killed all of them, and he's so upset about it.
Yeah. Listen to them, R2. They're dying. It's that trash compactor scene is one of the most iconic 3PO scenes of all of them. It's a great one. I really enjoy the classic one, which is, I'm pretty sure, also referenced in the Clone Wars. The episode is Children of the Force is the episode. No! Shut them all down! Hurry! And it's imitated, and it's not imitated, it's echoed by Yularen when Cad Bane's about to escape. No! Lock them all down! Hurry! Because the thing Star Wars is most obsessed with is A New Hope. When in doubt, reference A New Hope. It's true.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, yeah, he's very selfless with the, if any of my circuits and gears will help, I'll gladly donate them.
Right.
You know, I love the New Hope clips, but really, where C-3PO really gets his iconic stuff is in The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have the asteroid escape, where he is trying so hard to tell Han that the hyperdrive is down, and Han refuses to listen to him.
Get
and
the
it's just
professor in
like,
the back!
yeah, he constantly is like shoving him aside and talking back to him. And then when he figures out the hyperdrive doesn't work, C-3PO's like, I tried to tell you. He's like, I
Yeah.
hate that, because I'm like, he legitimately had a reason for trying to tell you something and you ignored him.
C-3PO is often ignored and cast aside by symptom of it being droids, by symptom of being a little snippy sometimes.
Yeah.
But mostly him being a droid. Of course, the line I'm going to pull out of here is a line that would go down famously in every single Star Wars trivia competition I think has ever been held. Sir, the odds of successfully circumnavigating an asteroid field is 3,720 to 1. Never tell me the odds.
Right.
Which, yeah, it's one of the most iconic exchanges in that movie. Yeah. Speaking of iconic exchanges, Sir, I've isolated the reverse power flux coupling. Well, thank you. First time Han's ever nice to 3PO, I think. But
he's not really nice, because he goes, thank you very much. And he's like upset about it.
He's mockingly nice.
Yes.
It reminds me of that sequence from Return of the Jedi where it's a funny sequence, but 3PO must be so annoyed in that sequence where Han asks C-3PO to ask Chief Chirpa about something. Mm-hmm. And then as he's about to go, he turns him back and he asks him about a different something. Turns back, asks him about a different something. And then he turns back to finally ask all that stuff. And he goes, hurry up, we don't have all day. Which... And
it's like, he was trying.
He was trying. He was trying. He was trying.
But yeah, when they, he's like, thank you very much. And C-3PO genuinely thinks Han is thankful. And he's just, like, oh, you're welcome. And it's just so excited that Han said thank you to him, because he can't read the situation.
Yeah. Both of these clips are both such great parts of Empire, because the dialogue in that movie, I will admit, is like just top notch. Even though it's not close to the top of my ranking of the Star Wars movies, it's top notch in that movie. Yeah. Should we get on to The Force Awakens?
Yeah.
And the line that lit the internet on fire for a few years.
I thought
you'll love it.
Oh god, the red arm bit was my favorite.
You probably
line.
Don't recognize me because of the red arm.
Force Awakens, to be perfectly honest, and I love all the Star Wars movies, but you gotta have a least favorite. And Force Awakens happens to be my least favorite.
Interesting.
And but that one line, I laughed so hard. I was just like, this is perfection. Like, he's so excited to see Han, and he wants Han to know that it's him. And so he's, again, trying to be helpful by explaining, but Han's like, what?
I know there are those who have their problems with Rise of Skywalker and Force Awakens. J.J. Abrams knows how to do C-3PO. He just knows how to do C-3PO.
Agreed.
He knows how to do that character. It's interesting that Force Awakens is your least favorite. I'm interested to see how you might react to mine, but I'm not gonna say it. Maybe. It's Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
That's my second favorite.
Ooh, wow, interesting. I know
Yeah.
people who it's their favorite. So and my Jacob's least favorite Star Wars movie is my third favorite. So it's like we have some interesting opinions here on In a Galaxy. So yeah, no, but that red arm line, I remember I've seen so many memes about that line. I have seen like too many memes about that line. I still love that line. It's such a, and the best part is how great the Force Awakens clip mirrors the previous Empire clip, because Han and Leia are having this intimate moment both times, and both times C-3PO has interrupted, and then right after he interrupts in Force Awakens, even though this is not part of the clip, I just happen to remember, you changed her hair. Same jacket. No. New jacket. And they're talking, Leia and Han are talking about how some things have changed and some things have stayed the same.
Right.
What's one of those things that's staying the same? 3PO interrupting them every single time. Yeah, it's a great little scene. I love it to death. But you know what I love even more than the clips, the 3PO scenes from The Force Awakens? The 3PO scenes in The Rise of Skywalker.
Love it.
Look, I know this movie is still very, very, very controversial. I know you love this movie, and I adore this movie. Look, I don't think I can hate a movie that has Babu Freak in it.
Right.
I don't think I can hate it. It has Babu Freak in it, like, already. It has Babu Freak in it. It's yeah. And there's that line, jumping ahead to that third clip, we have 4 clips from The Rise of Skywalker. We have the, I want you to know that you have been a real friend, Datu. We have 3PO on Pasana, once every 42 years. And we have 2 clips on Kijimi, one where 3PO decides to make the ultimate sacrifice, and the second one where we get Sith 3PO, which is scary.
Yeah.
I'm jumping to that third clip, which is one of my favorite lines from the sequel trilogy. You know the odds better than any of us, 3PO. Which sounds like your generic Star Wars line, until you realize it's a direct callback to Never Tell Me the Odds. And the constant times where C-3PO is telling everybody the odds of everything getting done, which I didn't pick up on the first time. There's that thing where I forget who it is. I think it's Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni or somebody who talk about having fun with the Star Wars universe, but not making fun with it. It's Taika Waititi who talks about it has fun, but it takes itself seriously. And that's one of those lines where it has fun and it takes itself seriously.
Yeah. I like that.
These scenes are great.
I think that it's interesting because, before, when C-3PO is told the odds, they've ignored him or brushed him off, but this time, she's being serious about
They're
it.
They're asking
and
him.
They want him to contribute.
It's not just an arc from the previous movies, it's also an arc from that movies. We have that part in that second clip where they're on Pasana, and he's like, the Aki Aki Festival of Ancestors happens once every 42 years. It's filled with all these sweets and all that, and they just all look back at him. And he looks at them like...
He looks behind him. He's like, who are they? Why are they looking this way?
No, the I was thinking of is like, they look, and he's like, you asked. I answered. You asked. It's great. Yeah. I'd also love to quickly touch upon that first clip, which is the I want you to know you've been a real friend, R2. Yeah. One of, I'd say, Force Awakens' shortcomings, its few shortcomings, is that sometimes Force Awakens doesn't take enough time to slow down and build those character moments, especially once we get off of Jakku.
Right.
But JJ seemed to improve upon that here, because it's just a small moment, but it really sets up the moment where C-3PO sacrifices himself later, where we realize that, yes, every mission C-3PO could not make it back from, but it's especially important this one because we know this is the last movie in the Skywalker saga. So there are real stakes now for C-3PO. Yeah.
And I just love that even though R2 and him are so snippy with each other, that he's like, you know what? Regardless of all that, you're my best friend. And I really care about you. And I just love that. I think it is and then in the junior novel adaptation of Rise of Skywalker, it has the way it writes that scene, is it that? No, it's the way it writes the ending of the movie and R2 and C-3PO coming back together is so beautiful, and I teared up. Like the junior adaptation of Rise of Skywalker is a brilliant novel.
Interesting. I have the Ray Carson novelization, which is also extremely good.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
But yeah, it does such a good job of showing how deep their relationship is, and I love that.
Yeah, that's great. There's a line here that I still get teary-eyed at, and I know there's some people who aren't crazy about this line, and I think that's a little weird, but like, there's that line that we all know from the trailers. What you doing there, 3PO? Taking one last look, sir, at my friends. And I know there are a bunch of people who are like, oh, but those aren't really C-3PO's friends. I mean, Luke and Leia and Han. I'm like, they're still his friends. It's like that. There's that line that Maz says in The Force Awakens. I've seen evil take many forms. The Sith, the Empire. Today it's the First Order. And 3PO over the years have seen many different forms of friends. Anakin and Padme in the prequels, Luke and Leia in the originals, and now Rey and Finn and Poe in the sequels.
Right.
He hasn't known them for that long, but they make the same impact.
Right.
I think the idea of those aren't his friends is kind of ridiculous because they are his friends.
Exactly. Yeah. I wrote that quote down. I'm taking one last look at my friends. I just, because he knows that this is the first time that he hasn't gone into self-preservation mode, and he's like, I really do need to make this sacrifice regardless of what it might do.
Yeah. And it's an interesting, I've been thinking a lot about this because, there is that movement to bring Ben Solo back from the dead, which I personally don't side with, but I'm like, I gotta make myself okay with this in case it happens. So I've been thinking about Ben coming back to life, similar to 3PO coming back to life, where similar to 3PO erasing his memory, because the effects of that aren't lasting in the Rise of Skywalker. Right. He gets his memory back. Mm-hmm. The thing is, he still goes through with it with the first place. He didn't know that was going to happen. He says straight up to them, R2's memory banks are famously unreliable.
Right.
He knows that there is he thinks there's 100% chance that his memory's going to be gone for good.
Right.
Even if he doesn't, maybe he doesn't think that. Even he thinks there's a high chance that his memory is going to be gone for good. So he still does it. He still makes the move. And then we get Sith 3PO, which is horrifying. I remember all those fan theories pre-Rise of Skywalker about, how was Sith 3PO gonna be done? Yeah. Those red eyes.
Yeah. My original theory for that was that they were going to have to implant him with 000's personality matrix from the Dr. Aphra comics.
Oh, that's
That's what I thought
crazy.
was going to happen, but obviously it didn't. But that would have been cool
Yeah,
and terrifying.
I had some interesting theories about the sequel trilogy, yeah, for sure. I feel like and like about this the general Disney stuff as well. But like yeah, it's this crazy scene. It's like I never thought we were gonna see something different inside 3PO.
Mm-hmm.
They went there, but they went there.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. I do want to point out one more line that's not in this scene, but is it later in the Rise of Skywalker, which is just, my God, it's the best scene. It's the best line ever. Babu Freak, he is my oldest friend.
Yes,
which is just the funniest line ever.
I love that line.
And like it's right when this is the fun part. It's right after, this is what 3PO excels at, is adding humor to situations that seem so humorless.
Mm-hmm.
Rey's just been told she's a Palpatine, like 5 minutes before. Like that's what the part of the movie we're in, where 3PO says that but 3PO is just like, yep, nope. I'm just gonna talk about Babu Freak, my oldest friend. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I read that the comedian Ben Schwartz, who was a friend of J.J. Abrams, wrote a lot of the C-3PO dialogue for Rise of Skywalker, and he did a fantastic job. Anything else you gotta say about any of these clips before we move on to our next part of the show?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. And yeah. I feel like I got a decent defense of one of my absolute favorite characters, who I think is super relatable and people shouldn't hate on.
No, they shouldn't. 3PO is, again, as I said before, he's such a distinct character. He's there for everything. I also like the idea that, like, there's very, like, kids enter the story through 3PO a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, C-3PO is such a relatable character, and R2 are such relatable characters to kids, especially. You know, when it was only 6 movies, when we only had 6 movies, there was that fact that C-3PO said the first line in New Hope, mm-hmm. and the last line in Revenge of the Sith. That he was this, like, kind of framing device character. I think we should get on to everybody's favorite part of Star Wars in the Galaxy. Here we go. Whew.
What you've brought me today is worth 1/4 portion.
Welcome to a 1/4 portion. The portion of In a Galaxy where we do a little something different. So what I've been doing for a lot of these ones I've been recording during the summer is I've been doing these quick rank things where I list a category and we talk about our top 5 things in that category. If you're up for doing that, Marie.
Yeah.
My first quick rank is the top 5. We were talking about this earlier. Most underrated Star Wars scenes. I was talking about the storytelling scene being very underrated. Mm-hmm. I want to expand this to anything. So movies and TV, and even you can add some books and comic stuff. I'm not gonna know much from there, but like,
oh gosh, okay. So one of them is Canto Bight. I feel like, and this may be more not so much underrated as wrongly maligned.
People give it too much crap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Canto Bight scene is brilliant. Like all those the aliens are just so good, and there's random weird moments of humor, and like the later on, and not the beginning part, but when the oh gosh, the Fathiers. I was like, how did I forget that? The Fathiers are galloping through, and there's the opera singer lady,
Oh
and like
yeah.
just weird stuff. But then one thing that's really cool that I noticed is that one of there's Dodabin, Wadabin, and Thodabin, I think. The
Star
little
Wars
like
and
yeah, the little reptile aliens that are kind of short. You see them, and they have a novella in the Canto Bight collection of novellas. And I love that you see them. And then they
yeah.
wrote a novella based off of it.
Yeah, the Canto Bite, I've heard like so many criticisms of that scene. They're I think they're wrongly directed. I've heard one that like, oh, it's too long. I'm like, yeah, sure, it goes on for a minute too long, maybe. That's what I can stretch about it. Like, maybe if you're not into that stuff, it goes on a minute too long. But no, it's a genius sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your number 4 for that one?
Another one would be the I love in Attack of the Clones, the droid factory scene. Like, I think there's danger and edge of your seat action, but also humor because of C-3PO and R2-D2.
Yeah.
And I love how it's this mesh of all these different kinds of aspects of genre. I think that's really, really cool.
It's a crazy sequence, I'll give it that. It's a crazy
Yeah.
sequence. I enjoy it. Go ahead, number 3.
So this one may not be that it's more that it's not as well known, but people that know about it, they know that it's epic. When in the comics, when Boba Fett tells Darth Vader the name of the pilot that destroyed the Death Star.
I know the frame. It's the broken glass on the Star Destroyer.
Yes,
Yeah.
like more people need to know about this particular panel because it is so powerful and so intense because he's just like breaking the glass with his mind because he's like, "Oh God, I have a son."
It's crazy. It's a I've seen the panel. It's breathtaking.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay. Do we have your 4th one?
4th one. So I would say, so this is a little more of a deeper cut, and it is from the Dr. Aphra series, but when Dr. Aphra 6 bore Mifrian, so a relative of Bor Gullet, on her girlfriend, and
Dear God.
makes her girlfriend think that she killed Aphra. And Aphra's reaction to doing something so horrible, and she did it to save both of them from Darth Vader. Like, she did it for a reason. But it's so epically sad and heartbreaking, and you see Aphra just completely break down, and she's just in the fetal position crying and is in so much pain because she did this. And you don't see this woman in pain. Like, she does not cry. And so to see her in a moment where she knows what she did was truly terrible is just really powerful, and ugh. it definitely made me tear up when I read that scene.
You lost me at Bor Gullet. No, I'm joking. Yeah, okay. That's crazy though. That entire I've heard a lot of people talk about how crazy that comic series is and how much like ridiculous things happen in that, and a cousin of Bor Gullet is something I'm going to have to mull over for a little bit of a while. I don't like that
because they're Marains, the species, but they have like individual names. which doesn't really make sense, but
I thought a species was also Borgullet, but okay.
yeah, it's
Okay,
a
anyway. I mean, I like Rogue One, okay. I just like that scene is so strange from that movie. What's your number 5?
So number 5 will be oh gosh, I just had it in my head. So okay, I know the scene that everybody hates, that the special edition changed it, and so they're really upset about it. But Jabba's palace, that song, I love.
Lop Neck.
Yes, I love Sice Noodles, and I love Joe Yowza, and I love that whole thing. Like, I have a tattoo of Ula, like that whole, you know, bit. But I love that song so much.
It's great. I love it a lot.
I had the CD that the only thing on the CD was that song.
Was Lofty Neck.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's a nut. That is a nut scene. It's from my favorite Star Wars movie, so of course I love it. But you know, yeah. Okay, here we go for mine. Number 5 was a very recent one from the Bad Batch episode Decommissioned. Which is the one with the Bad Batch and Rafa and Trace. Mm-hmm. When the droid army, like the droids come out of them manufacturing against the police on Corellia. That scene is not talked about enough, because another scene did it before they did with the Mandalorian and all those Mandalorians coming out of the covert in Chapter 3. But, like, it's kind of another version of that, but it's also, like, you know, we see, like, the programming of the droids where they say orders are orders and they just move out against the police. And we see Wrecker just recently having activated the chip a little bit inside himself. Mm-hmm. It doesn't go fully out until Battle Scars. But, you know, he had that good soldiers follow order thing in his head. Mm-hmm. And seeing the contrasting the programmings there and seeing the epicness of all those droids coming out, that scene's not talked enough about, and it's not in one of those, like, episodes that everyone's like, oh, that's the best. But it should be, because it's an incredible moment.
I agree.
Yeah, it's not talked about enough, in my opinion. Number 4, the Crate Dragon in The Marshal, in Chapter 9, The Marshal, the Mandalorian. I was on a big train of hating Tatooine until the Marshal redeemed that in my eyes. For a lot of people, the Marshal redeemed, the Mandalorian redeemed Boba Fett for them, and while that's true for me, the Marshal redeemed Tatooine. Like, I like Tatooine so much more now. I'm fully back on the Tatooine train because of that episode, pretty much. Nice. I just really liked number 3, and just that Crate Dragon fight is so great, and yeah, I'm a decently big KOTOR fan, and that's like a scene from KOTOR, so that's pretty cool. Number 3, opening scene of the Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan going out on those droids. That is one of the best scenes from that movie. It just is. We'd never seen before that Jedi going full action on their opponents, on those droids. And those are the first appearances of battle droids in combat. It's a crazy sequence, and it doesn't get enough credit.
And you get the first chronological, I have a bad feeling about this.
Yep, that's good too. Number 2 and number 1 are very personal to me. Number 2 is from my favorite episode of Star Wars, The Clone Wars, The Deserter. When Cut and Rex talk about names and about why Cut left. We have an entire episode that's just basically me ranting about how great The Deserter is. It's episode 42, Star Wars in a Galaxy, A Lesson of Choice. That scene is fantastic. I rant so much on that episode about why I love it. It's beautiful. Number 1, the scene consists of 2 words and 2 words only. I've talked so much about how much I love this scene. I actually did it in the last theme between themes. 2 words. Rey Skywalker. Most underrated scene in Star Wars. Period. I don't care. That scene is my favorite scene in that entire trilogy. Period. It's just this. I know there are people who have their different complaints about it. The idea that the message that this will send to the newer generations of Star Wars fans, and especially the young women who are watching this, that you can have a seat at the table, that you can be involved in these big stories, is just like, there's that idea that I hold fast to of I can't wait for like 10 or 15 years later until the sequels are loved as much as the prequels are now.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I really feel like Rey Skywalker is going to be one of people's favorite scenes like 10, 15 years from now. It's a beautiful scene. I couldn't imagine the sequel trilogy ending any other way. A, and B, it's something that I had been thinking up until The Rise of Skywalker, but I never thought they'd actually acknowledge in the movie. That Rey is like nobody Palpatine. She is whoever you want her to be at the end of the day. But more importantly than that, she is a Skywalker. She is good. She is the Skywalker of the trilogy. It's a beautiful scene, and I love it to death.
And I love that she chose her family.
Yes.
Instead of letting the baggage from her blood family bring her down, she's like, no, I'm choosing my family.
Yeah.
This is my family.
It is a beautiful sequence.
I agree completely.
And anytime you want to make me cry in Star Wars, you just slap on the Binary Sunset theme, which of course Rey Skywalker does shortly after that. And I'm like, okay, this is perfect. Yeah, okay. The final part of In a Galaxy before we go, when we have a new guest on, we ask them some questions. This is our speed round, except for not really, because Star Wars fans take forever to answer things. But it's our attempt at a speed round. I got 10 questions for you.
Okay.
And then we'll end this thing out. Okay, here we go. Tough one first. Who is your favorite Star Wars character?
Anakin Skywalker. Not Darth Vader. Anakin Skywalker.
I mean, he's born as Anakin and he dies as Anakin, so...
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Okay. What is your Star Wars movie ranking? If you don't have a complete ranking, you can tell us like a top 5 or a favorite or something like that.
So, first is Rogue One. And then second is Attack of the Clones. And I don't really know where to put Rise of Skywalker, but I find that Rise of Skywalker is like my current go-to. Like, it's the one I want to watch the most when I randomly want to watch a Star Wars movie. So I feel like it may be tied with Attack of the Clones at this point. And then third would be Revenge of the Sith, and then Phantom Menace, and then Return of the Jedi, and Solo are kind of tied, and then Empire Strikes Back and Last Jedi are kind of tied, and then A New Hope, and then Force Awakens.
Interesting order. Interesting order. I've heard so many different types of orders on from listening to people on the show, and I'm fascinated by that. I'm interested in your answer, and I think I might know your answer, but I'm interested anyway. Number 3, favorite non-movie Star Wars media that people are missing out on?
I mean, I guess because it is so visual at the same time that it's written, I'd say the comics. Yeah. I I mean, I love the most of the adult novels. I really enjoy, and I mean, I literally read all of it. I even read C-3PO Does Not Like Sand, which is a children's book.
Like father, like son.
Yeah. So I love all those too. Those are really cute. Chewie and the Porgs, like the children's books are really
I
cute.
think I might have that somewhere over here. Love that stuff. I am a huge Porg fan. I have this right here. I have like 16 Funko Pops, like just right out of sight, so you can't see them. Actually, speaking of some people, I just got Rey Skywalker right here.
Ooh.
Her lightsaber's bent. You can't exactly see it. I was very disappointed when it came in the mail. Her lightsaber was bent.
Oh no.
Yeah. But anyway. Yeah. I love Porgs. Love chewing the Porgs. Good stuff. Who is your favorite Star Wars background character? Everyone has one.
Okay, okay, Admiral Raddus.
Oh, interesting.
Admiral Raddus,
good
because
one.
I love how he is, wanting to go fight. I say we fight, and like wants to go out and do the thing, and then he does without telling anybody, and he's like, these people are being dumb.
Goodbye.
I'm gonna take care of business, and
that Star Destroyer is disabled.
I love him. He is wonderful.
Admiral Raddus is pretty fun. What, in your opinion, is the coolest Star Wars species?
Oh, Twi'leks for sure. Like I said, I have an Ula tattoo, so it's an Ula Hello Kitty tattoo.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I love Twi'leks a bunch. I think they're super cool.
What is your favorite Star Wars planet?
Probably Naboo. Probably. I'm trying to think if there's any thing that I'm missing. No, I think Naboo, because you get like two completely different groups of sentience on Naboo, and the architecture is really cool, and their culture is really cool. Like uplifting the arts so much, and the way they have like a music administrator, and like administrators for all these different things, like an astronomy administrator. It's just, I think their whole culture is fascinating, so I would say Naboo.
Yeah, good choice. I like Naboo a lot as well. There's that quote that Jacob quotes a lot from the Darth Plagueis book. Naboo is Theed is a fascinating city if you like museums.
Well, I grew up going to museums all the time, so there we go.
Yeah. If you were in the Star Wars universe, what do you think your job would be? What would you want your job to be?
What would my job be? That's a really good question. I mean, I think so. I'm a science educator at a museum, and I wonder how science education would work in Star Wars since the Force exists.
I was about to say, I imagine it'd have to do a lot with midichlorians.
Yeah, so I don't know. That would be interesting to be some sort of science-related thing to figure out how the Force would connect with science.
You could literally say to people, no, that's not how the Force works.
Exactly.
I mean, what more would you want, honestly? So George Lucas, in the behind-the-scenes documentary for Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, reportedly said, it's like poetry, they rhyme. Every stanza sort of rhymes with the last. Hopefully it'll work. One of the reasons why I love that quote so much is it's so true. There's so many examples. What is your favorite example of, it's like poetry, they rhyme? It could be from anything too. It doesn't have to be from like specific movies.
So I really liked the parallel that got noted between the Clone Wars season 7 episode where they were where the Martez sisters and Ahsoka were in the ship, and it went by Anakin and Yularen, and Anakin you could tell he knew that Ahsoka was there, but he let it go. And then in the original trilogy, when like a similar thing happens when Darth Vader kind of lets it go. So
it's a great one.
Yeah, I think I like that a lot.
Yeah. Okay. If you could take one item or force power from Star Wars into the real world, what would it be?
I don't know that I would have a use for a lightsaber, but that would be really cool. It's a really good question. I guess I'll just go with one force power that would be really cool to have. It would be psychometry, like Quinlan Voss. So where you touch something and you get like basically memories from the object. That would be really cool.
I'm pretty sure another one of our guests said that, and yeah, I can see how it's so popular, where you can see the history of an object. I remember using it a lot when I was playing Fallen Order. Okay, finally, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna share the screen, and I will show you the name of a character. All I want you to do is tell me how you pronounce that name, because there have been many different ways of this pronunciation. I'm curious. Okay, I'm back. Okay, here we go. So, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna share the screen, and I will show you the name of a character. All I want you to do is tell me how you pronounce that name, because there have been many different ways of this pronunciation. I'm curious. Okay. You're seeing this.
Yeah. Zam Wessel.
Okay, thank you. The streak continues. Literally every other guest I've had on this show has also pronounced it Zam Wessel, because that is indeed the correct pronunciation. A friend of the show, Devore, has said that he learned the pronunciation Zam Wessel from the video game Star Wars Bounty Hunters, which is just frankly incorrect. Yeah, the streak keeps going. Every single one, other than him, that's come onto the show has said Zam Wessel. That's crazy. Okay, it continues. We've had like 8 or 9 guests on. So the streak continues. Okay. So before we go, Marie, please take this opportunity to plug where you can be found and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So you can find me on Twitter at Alia Morgaine. You can find my review blog where it's been a little light recently, but I'm hoping to pick it back up soon. I like to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on my blog. It's the Star Wars Review.blogspot.com. And I have almost 500 reviews on it.
Oh no.
So
wait.
Oh
no. Wait, Marie, you broke up. I'm so sorry. I didn't get that last part in there.
Okay. So I have a review blog, the Star Wars Review.blogspot.com, where I have about 500 reviews so far. And I mean, it's everything: children's books, adult novels, kids comics, adult comics, TV shows. The only thing I don't review are movies. That's the only thing I don't review. Just because I don't know, the other stuff is more, comes out all the time. So there's that. And then of course there is Afra's Artifacts on YouTube where I talk about queer Star Wars, and I love doing that. It's a lot of fun. There are way more queer characters than you could ever possibly imagine, and it is so much fun to talk about them. Unfortunately, they are like 98% found in the written material.
Yeah.
But it's still really cool to bring them out and be like, look, this is someone you can relate to. And I love being able to do that because I want people to see themselves in Star Wars.
Absolutely, and I think that's great. Thanks so much for again coming on. I'll do our quick plug. You can find In a Galaxy at In a Galaxy Pod on Twitter, at Star Wars In a Galaxy on Instagram. You can find our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your podcast. We'll be there. For not, let us know, and we'll see what we can do about getting on there. Indeed, you can also email us, swinagalaxy@gmail.com. We love getting emails from listeners and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, next week, what's happening next week? This schedule is next week. We are going to be taking a week off. We pre-recorded a lot of content this summer because Jacob is unfortunately not around, but we're taking the week off. But the next week after that, we will resume with our regularly scheduled show. It will be episode 56 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. We will be watching, coincidentally enough, Shadow Warrior, Mercy Mission, and Nomad Droids, believe it or not. That's a weird coincidence. That lined up pretty well. So you'll hear Jacob and my full thoughts about those 3 episodes. We definitely have thoughts. I'll just say that we have thoughts. Yeah. Until then, may the Force be with you always.